Greetings, initiates. I'm Jedediah Thomas, the Mind Master. Today, I wanted to talk about the mind's autocomplete process and how that ultimately results in your brain rewriting your entire reality. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content about the mind, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, traumas, limiting belief, and motivation, and everything around that. So, I really wanted to talk about rewriting your reality, but I understand that it would probably be difficult for you to understand how that works unless I first explain the autocomplete process. So, the autocomplete process is basically an extremely powerful mechanism that your brain does naturally all the time. It's integral to my method for limiting belief removal. It's integral to my method for trauma removal. And it's something that, like I said, you do naturally all the time, probably without realizing it. And it's kind of the core function that causes a lot of other core functions to happen. As I kind of break all this down, it will probably, hopefully, make a little bit more sense to you what it is, how it works, and how it fits into everything else. So, your brain is a computer. Your mind is a computer, an extremely powerful computer, right? And so, what I've basically figured out how to do is to use the brain's autocomplete process to run equations. And as it runs those equations, it heals trauma and it corrects limiting beliefs. So, you've seen in another video how I talked about unplugging the trauma dam, right? Is that I change a few things and then your brain starts to rewrite everything else. And it's exactly the same with limiting beliefs. I change an underlying belief and your brain starts to rewrite everything else. So that is actually an extension of the autocomplete process, except it's something that happens automatically over time without further input, without me having to do anything else. So I make a base level change and then everything starts to change above that. So it's very similar to like a calculator, right? If you put in a series of inputs, 4 + 5, and then you hit enter or equals, then it will return the answer of 9, right? And so kind of what psychology does and why it's not effective is all psychology does is look at what's on the screen. Like they punch buttons and they're like, okay, what's the screen say now? It's 9. And then they punch some buttons and okay, what's the screen say now? It's 10. And they have no idea why it's 9 in one case and they have no idea why it's 10 in another case. But what I've figured out how to do is actually go in and change it to 5 + 5, and then your brain recalculates that equation and now the answer is 10. So I know that the output can change by changing the input, right? So what I do is basically I put different variables in your brain and I run the calculator, I run the equation, and what it does is use those inputs, those variables, to create an entirely new output that fundamentally changes your reality on the most basic level. All right. So in your subconscious, and I'll make another video about this because it is kind of a big topic. There you have what is basically your model of reality, which is your fundamental assumptions about what reality is, who who you are as a person, who you are as a human being, who other people are in your life, how they relate to each other, how you relate to them, how the world relates to you, how you relate to the world. It's basically how you view reality. And while there are fundamental things in reality that can't change, such as gravity, such as, water being wet and, different things that are just part of our base level reality, your perception of reality is entirely malleable. And what that means is everything that you believe about anything can be changed. And when you change your beliefs about things on that extremely fundamental level, your subconscious starts that autocomplete process, which will heal a trauma or shift a belief. But then, as it starts to incorporate new data into that model, it will start to rewrite everything else that you believe about reality based on that change happening, right? So in the case of a trauma, right? Let's say you were going home one night and you got attacked in an alleyway and stabbed and robbed. Okay, you're probably going to be traumatized from that. That's a pretty traumatic event. And for the rest of your life, if you don't fix that trauma, there's going to be several things that happen. Number one is that your brain is going to be keep thinking of, oh, if only that incident didn't happen, my life would be different. Oh, if only that didn't happen, everything in my life would be different. And it's true, right? And then the other thing is that it will continue to put you in situations that will potentially recreate that trauma because it's trying to heal. And I made another video about that already, about being stuck in the trauma cycle, stuck in the trauma loops. So that's like a trauma side. And then on the limiting belief side, it's like, I believe that it is fundamentally impossible, according to the laws of the universe, to make $100,000 in a year, right? There's some people, they just can't comprehend it. Or I can't believe that I could make $1 million in a day. Add whatever numbers you want. Like it's physically impossible, according to the laws of nature, to make that amount of money in that short amount of time. And yet there are people in the world who do that, namely the billionaires, right? They make a lot of money. But my point is it's not matter. It doesn't matter what numbers you plug into that. It doesn't matter what time frame you plug into that. You believe on a fundamental level that your amount of money is limited by a certain amount of time, and that's different for different people. And that's why you have people who become rich and you have people who stay poor. So what I do is I go in and I remove that trauma, right? So you know how your brain says, well, if only that incident never happened, my life would be totally different. So I go in and I remove that trauma where you were in an alleyway and you got stabbed and robbed, and your brain realizes that event is gone, and it starts to rewrite your reality based on the fact that it's not there. Just like it said, if that event was not there, my life would be different. And it starts to create a different life based on that event not being there. And then same thing with limiting beliefs, right? I believe it's fundamentally impossible to make this amount of money in this amount of time. And I change that belief on a fundamental level. So you don't just consciously acknowledge it, you actually believe that now it's possible to make that amount of money. And your brain starts recalculating and it says, okay, how can I make that amount of money? How can I make that amount of money, period? And then how can I make that amount of money in a shorter amount of time, right? So that's where you start having bigger ideas about maybe like businesses or problems you can solve in the world that will make you a lot of money, or different things, right? So it fundamentally changes your view of how the world works. And it does it in such a powerful way that you now know it's possible. And so all of your energy, instead of fighting that possibility, is now going towards how to realize that possibility in your life, right? In the outer world. And so basically, to tie all this together, because I did cover a vast number of topics to actually get to this point of tying all this together, is that your brain fills in holes. That's what it does, right? If it has 4 plus x equals 9, there's a hole there. And your brain immediately tries to fill it in with 5, right? That's what algebra is based on. It's an extension of that mechanic of your mind, just like computers are an extension of that mechanic of your mind, because you put in basically the color magenta, right, is comprised of 2 completely different colors, right? And then your brain perceives it as magenta when the color magenta doesn't actually exist. So we use this all the time, but we don't realize it. But our brain is a master of filling in whatever missing information is there for us to complete the equation. And all I do is I put in a different equation, and your brain auto completes that equation to be something completely different. And then your entire reality is now has a different number in it, right? So that is part of a bigger equation, which then changes another variable, which is part of a bigger equation, which changes another variable, and your brain just starts auto-completing all the way up until your life is completely different. You're making more money, you're happier, your relationships are better, you're not in pain, you're not hurting, you're not limited by anyone or anything. And it almost gets to the point where you can't even recognize your life anymore because it's so vastly different than what it was a few months ago, right? Because I have literally changed your reality. And it's not something that happens on an external level, right, where you get a windfall of money and then that level of money doesn't match your internal reality, so then you get imposter syndrome. What I do is I change your internal reality, and then that changes your actions, which then change your external reality, so you don't actually get imposter syndrome while your life is completely turned around from where it was a few months ago, right? So your reality will fundamentally be different, when after we work together compared with before. It will take a little bit of time for you to actually see the reward of the new actions that you're taking, but those actions will only be possible because now you believe it's possible because of us working together, right? So when I say your brain rewrites reality, it does, right? But then it also changes your actions so that your reality is then reflected in the outside world as well, to now match the inner new reality where you are faster, better, stronger, smarter, more confident, more powerful, more empowered, a greater human being than you were before we started working together. And now everything is different thanks to that new reality. So once again, I am Jedediah Thomas, the Mind Master. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Follow me for more content. I will be creating a movement, the Initiates of the Mysteries of the Mind. So stay tuned for updates about that. As I put together that, I will, start promoting it. Right now, it's still in the admin stages, but just stay tuned for that, and I will see you on the channel. Thanks. Bye.